Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talks at Google. My name's Nadia, and I'm very excited to introduce Demetri Martin. So a round of applause and welcome into the room.
Thank you. Wow. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for coming today.
I appreciate it.
I'm very excited. Everyone here is very excited. So we're going to do some questions, and then at the end, I'll let you guys know when, and we'll open it up to Q&A. We can pass the mic around, so start thinking if anyone has anything. So the movie Dean, I watched it. Really, really great.
Thanks.
Really
I'm glad
loved
you
it.
watched it. No, you liked it. Thanks.
And if I missed anything, let me know. But you directed, you wrote it, you produced it, and you did all the sketches, and you starred in it.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
It's a lot of hubris involved in that move. Put it all out there, though.
Yeah, yeah. Can you talk us through like when you had the idea and just writing, getting all the way to filming?
Yeah. So I mostly do stand-up comedy, and I got into stand-up to do stand-up. I like writing jokes, and I like telling them. I feel lucky that I can do it as a job. I found a way to make money doing it. But along the way, mostly in my notebooks, just from writing jokes by hand, which I still like to do. You know, type them into my phone sometimes, but usually I carry a little notebook. I'll just write down ideas. Along the way, doing that every day, other ideas started to come out. Sometimes they were drawings, just little line drawings, and sometimes, I don't know, like an idea for a book or a short story, and movie ideas were in there. Most of them were like higher concept. For whatever reason, I was drawn to the idea of making movies about outer space or, I don't know, underwater or whatever the hell I thought I was going to do. But then I did sell a couple pitches over the years, and I got money for the scripts, which was cool. Excuse me, I had this free club soda that you guys gave me, thank you. But I chose poorly because I'm going to burp through my conversation. But I love this mixed berry thing here. I'm not sponsored by them or anything.
No.
Yeah, so after I sold those pitches, I thought, hey, I'm going to get to make these concept-y movies that'll get made in Hollywood, and maybe I'll get to play a part in them, but they never got made. So it was nice to get money, but it never went anywhere. So after some years, I decided if I'm going to have a shot at making movies, I'll have to write them myself, for myself, and I'll direct them. And I'll learn how to do each of these roles so that I can have creative control and also get the thing made. I can make it happen. And then after that, I realized, well, I'll have to write a small idea because no one's going to give me money to do a big movie. So I wrote this one, which is a very personal, smaller story, I guess you could say. I was lucky I got Kevin Kline to play my dad in the movie, and that made it a real movie. That helped me get the financing. A lot of it came together when Kevin responded to the script and said he would do it. So that was like a big leap in the process. Yeah. That kind of got me down the road to actually making the movie. It took a while, though. It's weird when you make a small indie film like this one. Nobody cares. Nobody wants the movie. Nobody's waiting for it. So you have to hustle and try to find your way through it. But I did, and I'm grateful now because I have a finished movie, and it's actually going to be in movie theaters, there was no guarantee that would happen. So I'm trying to focus on that and not worry about how well it'll do or just how nasty people will be online. I mean, I don't think there's anything
I think they're gonna
that would provoke
nice.
that, but of course, you know, I think it's a colder world these days, so making something heartfelt has a certain scariness to it. You know?
Definitely, very vulnerable.
Yeah, I think it is. It's certainly more vulnerable than I've been in my stand-up. Yeah. I like doing jokes about chairs and trees and stuff like that, so those are safe topics usually, and this is more about... Even there, they're like, you fucker, that was a racist chair. Well, I just, no, I didn't, how? It was about a chair. I don't know, whatever. My mother was a chair, you piece of shit. Fuck, what? But now, yeah, so this is more about grief and loss, and you know, it's a personal thing. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write the script all the way through?
I don't know. I was trying to do the math. Someone else asked me, and I was like, okay, I think I started writing it about 5 years ago, and then I stopped, and I went to some other idea that I thought would be, again, it was a higher concept thing, and that's what, it was around then that I realized, I'm not going to get money for this, so I went back to this one. I shot it in 2014, so it is about 3 years old just from the filming to now release. I sold the movie a year ago at the Tribeca Film Festival, not the one that just happened, but a year back. And now finally it'll be out. So some time has passed in there. It hasn't changed. In the last year, it's just been sitting there waiting to show it to people. But the writing took, I don't know if it took on and off about a year or 9 months or I don't know, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think you learned about yourself in the process of making this film?
Well, a few things. Stand-up doesn't teach you how to work with others. It really teaches you vigilance and self-reliance, fear. Just, you know, if you're in a live show situation, any sudden movement, it's a very primordial experience. You're like, that's a threat. Like, this guy's coming up. No, he has to pee. Okay, cool. He's fine. So it's a very self-contained, often solitary experience. Traveling, I'm basically like a traveling salesman. I just go to a city, do the show, get back in the rental car, return it the next morning at the airport, go to the next city, etc. Making a movie taught me a lot about how I work with others, and I found some great collaborators, which is wonderful. My DP was great, my art director. I loved the cast. I got to cast the movie, so I got time to really pick people, and I thought a lot about what my day-to-day life would be like making the movie. Not just the end product that I wanted, but process. I'm sure many of you have encountered this in your work, just how important process is. I just want to like what I'm doing and not chase achievements so much, but ideally have them be maybe the byproduct of a process that I enjoy. So I don't know what I learned specifically about myself there, other than I learned that how much I do like working with other people and having colleagues, which I don't usually have as a comedian.
Right.
I like the freedom of being a comedian, but as I'm getting a little older, it's nice eating lunch with other people and having, you know, conversations during the day rather than just walking around a city like a drifter and listening to my iPod or whatever. Right. The other thing I learned was I got to see my nose from every angle in the edit. And this was a difficult experience. I mean, I know what I look like, but man, it's nice to write and direct and star in your own thing, but man, you get what you asked for. Because I'm sitting there in the edit for months just like, oof. Yeah, okay, let's use that. That's the best take. I'll get over it. I'll get over myself. The world knows what I look like. I just wasn't quite aware, but now I do. It's tough.
When you're doing stand-up and prepping for that, is your writing like routine or method just walking around and just waiting for ideas to come?
Yeah, I did most of my stand-up in New York. When I started in New York, and I lived there for 14 years. So most of my writing process was walking around the city, hopping on the train, going into a coffee shop, always with a notebook, drawing, writing, daydreaming. I learned along the way to be less critical of myself as I was generating material. And I've developed a tolerance for how shitty a lot of the stuff I come up with is. Whereas I think early on, I was discouraged because I would write a joke and be like, that's stupid, it's not original, it's whatever. And then over time, I was like, you know what? I think it's important to write those down. Don't worry about it. Just generate the content, and hopefully in quantity, I might find quality. And I have found that for me mostly to be the case. I have to sift through a lot of stuff, but when I go to make a project, I look through my notebooks. I have a lot of them now from over the years. And I can just look through and find, you know, I wrote that as a joke idea. It didn't work as a stand-up joke, but that's actually might be a piece of dialogue for a character to say. And this single panel drawing could actually be a character for an animated film idea. Or here's a short story I hadn't thought of, but this one joke suggests to me, you know, you look at your old stuff, and I don't remember something that I wrote in a notebook on a random day in 2005. So I get to rediscover some of the old ideas. So that's always been a part of the process for me. I moved to California. I live in a canyon. We don't have sidewalks. But when I go for a walk, I'm going to get hit by a car probably, so that's not going to help my process. So I got to figure out a way to walk. Because I think kinesthetically, for me, it actually helps me to generate ideas. Sitting in one place in just a white room would probably not help me so much. That, to me, leads to analysis, self-analysis, dovetails nicely into some self-hatred, and then you know, I'm off to the races there. So I don't do that. So I got a treadmill desk. And I have a treadmill desk in like a little shed in my backyard. And I just get on there when I'm home in the morning, and it's like I have weird vitamins I have to take. Like I have to write a page of jokes. If I want to do a new stand-up special, which I'm going to do, I have to write. So just open up a Word document and just put the date, and when I just write jokes until I get to the bottom, and then I kind of put that in a folder and work on whatever script I'm trying to write or a comedy essay or whatever, do my email and all that stuff. And it turned out to be a wonderful metaphor for Hollywood because I'm just going nowhere. I'm just walking literally on a treadmill every day, just trying to write my movies that nobody's asking for. You know?
It's a good metaphor.
It's perfect, yeah.
It's nice. Going back to early days, so in my thorough research for this talk, you were in law school.
Yeah.
And then full ride for law school.
Yeah.
And then on the second out of 3 years,
yeah,
you were like, no mas.
Correct.
Comedy time.
Yes, I went right to law school out of college, and I had a scholarship, which was nice, so I didn't have to accrue debt. Mm-hmm. Can I accrue? Am I using that word, or does it accrue itself? Whatever.
Well,
I didn't have debt. That's all. My vocabulary is shrinking as I get further into comedy. So I thought I would be a public interest lawyer, and then shortly after getting into law school, I just realized that I don't care enough about other people. That's not true. It might be true. But more that I just wasn't suited for law, and I'm not that thorough a person. And I think I found when I was in law school, it seemed to require a lot of thoroughness. I write short jokes, and I don't think that's by mistake. Once I get a punchline or two off a topic, I'm kind of spent, so I move to the next one. So to do legal research and all that, let alone have somebody's financial future or freedom in my hands, was like, I'm not suited for that. So. And
were you like the class clown growing up, or was comedy the natural choice?
No, I wasn't the class clown, but I got friends. I think I got laughs with my friends. My dad was a really funny person, so I was around someone who was funny. But then in law school, I became kind of the class clown, and that was a bad sign, because, how you doing? What's up? Hey, just doing crowd work for the people in the other campuses. A couple of people entered the room. Yes, but then in law school, I think I was trying to be funny because it was like a mismatch, and I was trying to break out of it or something.
And what was your first stand-up set like?
My first set I did, I think about 6 minutes, and I did 12 jokes. God bless you. Somebody sneezed. It's not like a Jesus, it's not like a religious moment. Bless you for asking that question about my past. Yeah, I did 12 jokes, and about 6 of them worked. I was thrilled. Yeah, I was totally psyched. And then I actually had booked it so that I did stand-up on a Monday night. This open mic was my first thing in a comedy club. And the second night was the very next night, Tuesday, in a bar called the Ye Olde Triple Inn in Manhattan. It was on 55th Street. There's a small comedy show there, so I did the second night right after. So I figured I'm going to bomb the first night, I'll pick myself back up, and I'll try again the next night so I can just kind of get this over with and feel what it's like to bomb. Well, the first night went really well, so now I was excited because I was like, great, this material works, and I had more confidence, and I was doing the same material, so I thought, this will be good. And then I went the second night and just died. I mean, nothing. I got no laughs with the same set. I just bombed. It was really tough. I remember the first night I got into bed after my set. I got home and I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. I was like, I'm a comedian. I'm like, I'm going to be a comedian. This is going to happen. And then the next night I couldn't sleep, but for a different reason. I was just like devastated. I was like, I don't understand. Like, I thought those jokes were funny. And, I learned quickly just how unpredictable it is, and every audience is different.
The setting and
it's setting, time. You're following somebody dirty. There was something happened. Someone's in a bad mood. There just aren't that many good laughers. I love comedy, but I'm not a good laugher. I realize it now. A bad audience for me would be just a bunch of people like me who are having a good time and they like it, but they just smile. Because as a comedian, you're like, I'm dying. They hate me. That's how I am. I just look and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Asshole. Like, give me something. Smile. Laugh. So you learn a lot after. I'm 20 years into it, so I've been in front of lots of different crowds now. So it's good. Exposure it's helpful.
Is that the advice you would give yourself, if you could?
If I could go back, I would say write things down and record yourself. If you want to get better, record yourself and listen to and/or watch yourself, as painful as it is, because I think you can get better faster. I think there's something very unhealthy about it. I'm selling myself. I try not to do material about myself because I just don't think people want to hear it, and it's just too self-involved. So that's why I think I like doing jokes about objects and observational stuff. But I'm trying to learn how to share more personal stuff at the same. Like I love Richard Pryor. I mean, if Richard Pryor talks about himself, I'm all ears. It's just you got to be interesting enough, I guess.
And what do you love most about doing stand-up?
I think creatively, it's really challenging, and I so far have not gotten bored of it. And there's so much freedom. I think these days, some of that freedom is qualified because you have to be careful about what you say. I'm not particularly edgy, but as comedians, we use audiences. They help us. The audience guides you, and they teach you if you're on the right track or not. They guide you. So you need an audience, and sometimes you might say something inappropriate or over the line, but it's like you're drawing or sketching with people there. It's like they're kind of the notebook in a sense. But that's still, as difficult as that is these days in our internet culture, I still think there's so much creative freedom there in stand-up. It's really cool, and it's a great job to have. So yeah, I still love it, and I want to do stand-up for as long as I can.
Yeah. For me, I think if you really believe in yourself and believe you can achieve something, oftentimes you can. And when you were first starting, what was your inner dialogue? You're like, I can do this. I'm gonna make it.
When I was first starting, as dorky as it might sound, so I was broke. So luckily, I didn't have law school debt, but I had zero. So I wasn't negative anything, but I was pretty much at zero for money. So I got temp jobs, and I trained to be a proofreader. I did that for a while in law firms and financial printers. I would just proofread documents, paid a decent hourly rate. And I would write jokes. Proofreading worked out nicely for me because I didn't have to answer phones or interact with people. I just had to correct documents. And I had a notebook next to me, and I could write down joke ideas and still kind of daydream while I was doing it. It was kind of mindless. I think, I've forgotten the question. So what did you say again?
What was the question?
Oh, yeah, I remember now. What did I tell myself? Because I was like, wait, was it the time travel thing? Wait, I already answered that. But am I time traveling in my own head now?
Did you believe it was going to,
this is your life? So what I was going to say was, in doing those jobs, I got a library card, a New York Public Library card.
Okay.
And I had this commute. I was living in the Bronx at the time, and I was temping often downtown in Manhattan. So I was riding the train for sometimes 3 hours a day, depending on what time I went home. It was just the train went local for half the ride because it was way up there. But the library card saved me. I couldn't afford to buy a lot of books, but I could take them out of the library. So, and this is 97. I was reading 4 books a week because I was just reading for hours every day on the train. And
comedy books or just?
No, I was reading Abraham Maslow, I remember, was a big book for me. It's the Farther Reaches of Human Growth, I think or Human Experience. Can't remember. But anyways, it's about the pyramid of needs, self-actualization theory and stuff. I read The Transcendentalists. I went back and read. I remember liking that stuff in school. It was in some ways, some of the first self-help books. And then I did read self-help books too, mostly nonfiction. I wasn't really reading literature or novels or anything. I think I was trying to pump myself up. And I made a little notebook, and I would photocopy pages that had things that I like, passages that I like, and then I'd take the photocopies and cut them out and paste them into this little notebook that I would carry. And they were really inspiring quotes. And that helped me a lot. It's really a dorky answer, but it's the truth. And this made me feel like I was on some sort of quest.
Yeah.
And that, I did have a dream and I was going to pursue it.
Would you share that with other stand-up comedians?
What's that? My notebook? Yeah. I don't think so. I'm trying to... Yeah, I think there were a couple people probably I talked about it with who I became closer with, but I remember one time I was at Caroline's Comedy Club in Manhattan, near Times Square. This was a couple years into it, so I was getting spots in decent clubs, and I was backstage. I had a longboard at the time. I used to skateboard everywhere around Manhattan. I was a big skater when I was in middle school and high school. Yeah, I had the half pipe in my backyard that I built with my friends. So I loved skateboarding. And I was okay. I thought I was good at it, but didn't pan out for me. It's not my calling, but I skated a lot. So when I got to New York, I got a longboard because it's more stable. It's easier as a kind of commuter board, and I couldn't afford cabs. So you can take the subway north and south, but it's hard to go cross town. So when I went from spot to spot, I would skateboard anywhere. So anyway, I skated. I had the skateboard that night. I'm backstage at Caroline's, And some older comics came in, and it might have been like Mark Maron and Jim Norton. I think Jim Norton was one of them. You guys might not know these. You probably know Maron. You might know Jim too. Jim's actually quite successful. But in the comedy world, these guys are very successful. At the time, they weren't like big successes, but they were ahead of me, and they were like my elders in a sense. And there was like a real kind of tough guy vibe in New York at that time. Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn was based on some of that scene that was at the Comedy Cellar. And I call it like tough guy comedy. So anyway, I'm backstage, and these guys come backstage and another comic. And I had a book with me which was something like How to Read Poetry and Fall in Love with It. I had taken it out of the library. So I'm back there reading this book, and I've got my skateboard, and I just got crucified by these guys, you know? It was just, so I was like not inclined to share a lot of my personal...
More sensitive.
My personal educational pursuits with people. But for me, comedy felt like art. I read a fair number of books about painting, because I remember thinking, you know, comedians are kind of like artists. Each has his or her own style. You can be part of a community, but you don't usually paint with another person. You don't do the painting together. It's happened, but most people just paint alone. That's what skateboarding was like. I skated with my friends. You develop your tricks, he's developing his tricks. You skate together, but we don't do the trick together. I'm on my own course, and I'm developing my own repertoire, and that's how stand-up feels. So you're together, and you share this experience, but it's ultimately your own. It's private. So that's why the reading was helpful to me.
Yeah. Within the Comedy Cellar, would the other comedians, were they very like, would they give you advice, or the ones that you respected, would you seek advice from them?
Yeah, sometimes.
Anything that stuck with you?
Liz Winstead, I was an intern at The Daily Show when Craig Kilborn was the host. So this was early on. Around the time I was temping, I got this job in the audience department of The Daily Show. Liz was the head writer and co-creator of The Daily Show, the original one. Excuse me, I asked her for advice once, and she said, you know, you can't please everybody. It was simple. She's like, you'll never make everybody laugh, so don't worry about that. Don't try to do that. Just find your people. I thought that was really helpful. Trying to think of other things. I don't know, I can't remember specific things, but I do remember certain people, like Greg Giraldo was really nice to me. He had gone to law school also, and I think he practiced before he became a comedian. So we had that in common, just the law school experience. So there were certain comedians who were very, I don't know if mentoring is the word, or like avuncular, but they were nice. They were welcoming. Whereas many were just kind of like, oh, who's this asshole with the backpack? You know, that's kind of the vibe you get.
And then if you could do any career that didn't involve comedy, and also money doesn't matter in this scenario, what would you want to pursue?
So I could do any career and money doesn't matter.
You're a trillionaire, so.
Trillionaire, okay,
yes.
Shit. That's definitely fucked up my moral fiber, so now what job do I do? That doesn't get a laugh at Google. I really like drawing and painting, and I'm not very good at it, but I really enjoy it. So I think I would be a trillionaire painter who makes gigantic works and just has his own warehouse. That doesn't, I wouldn't have to worry about selling them. At that level, art materials would be quite expensive for the kind of stuff I'd want to be doing. But
you're a trillionaire, so.
But I'm a trillionaire, you know. I mean, I have my own island, and it's like an art island, you know.
Yeah.
When I die, it's like a weird installation. They're all paintings of my money. Just stacks of money. Probably something in the visual arts. I like drawing and painting a lot. Again, I'm not self-deprecating. I've seen the work of great painters, and mine is not that work. But I do like it. I really enjoy doing it. So that's kind of a perfect fit if I had a lot of money, because when I'm painting, I feel like I have a flow experience. If you guys are familiar with that term, the book by Mahali, if anybody knows how to say his last name, yeah, thank you. I read that book years ago when I was first starting comedy. I thought it was a great book, and that kind of was a nice companion piece to the Maslow stuff, because it talks about peak experiences and flow experiences.
And flow being, it just is coming out. And
yeah, the idea from what I remember was flow experiences have certain characteristics. One of them is you have a discernible goal, and you then can achieve it. And on the way to achieving it, you lose track of time because you're so immersed in what you're doing. And hopefully what you're doing is also using your particular bundle of talents and abilities well enough that you're fully engaged. From what I remember in the book, he talks about the difference between, God bless you, pleasure and enjoyment. Pleasure being like eating some cake or, I don't know, having sex or something like that. It just feels great while it's happening. But you haven't necessarily grown or felt. Am I saying that right? Do you remember this? Is not necessarily a feeling of like growth or development at the end of it. Whereas enjoyment had, in his description, it did have that feeling. Mountain climbing was an example I remember from the book. If you interviewed someone who's climbing a mountain, like as they're hanging on the side of it and their fingers are digging into the rock, you having fun? They'd be like, no, I'm going to fucking die. Leave me alone. I got to do this. But then when they get to the next level, there's a feeling of enjoyment. They were totally engaged. It was difficult, but yet there's a feeling of enjoyment, which is different than just like kind of blobbing on your couch and eating ice cream, farting quietly under a blanket. You know? That can be fun, but that's not necessarily a growth experience. Quietly, he says,
That's interesting. Do you feel that you enter a state of flow when you're on stage?
Occasionally, if I'm in the right mood. Not always, yeah. Sometimes it feels like work, but yeah. I try to write a lot more on stage now. I try to improvise more and be more present, and that makes it more fun.
Was improv ever a part of your...
No, I never did improv. I never did that. And I never did sketch comedy or any of that stuff, so it was just stand-up for me. But now, you know, some years into it, I feel comfortable enough to improvise and do crowd work and stuff. So yeah, it gives me a better chance at that. But if I don't do that, then I kind of just, it's just more like a presentation, you know? It's just like, here are my jokes.
Right. Okay. Cool. I've got one more question, and then we'll pass the mic around. So if you guys have anything, just raise your hand, and we'll jog it to you. So now that you've done Dean, and it was great and it's a success, do you want to make more movies?
Thanks. I'm going to take that.
It is a success.
It was great. It's a success. It's cool because it hasn't come out yet, but I'm with you. I'm like, I'm going to count it as a success and just like ignore whatever happens. How's the movie? It's a success. Don't worry about it. I did it and it's done, okay? It's a movie. Just watch it and shut up. I do feel excited that I got to make one. It was hard, you know?
I bet, yeah. But is it another one?
Do I want to make it?
Or is it too soon to decide?
No,
right
I want to make another one, yeah. Okay. I outlined a movie last summer, and then I realized that even if I got the money for it, I don't think I'm good enough yet to make it because it would take place in like another dimension and all this stuff. I'm like, you know what, it's going to be too hard. So I put it aside, but I have the whole thing outlined, which is nice. So I know how the story works. And then I started a different one after that I thought I could make if this did well enough that I got a little bit more money. So that's what I'm working on right now. Are you
starring in the other two films?
Yes, I am. But my goal is not to go starring in all my movies. But right now, I'm still trying to figure out how I make movies and tell stories. And I have to say, there is a nice degree of control in that because I get to write the movie at home when I'm writing it on my computer. And then, as they say, you write it 3 times. When you write it, when you shoot it, when you edit it. And if you're acting in it, then you have even more freedom to change. So when I'm in the scenes, I can feel what's happening, and I get to rewrite as I'm doing it. And then in the edit, it's nice to have the control as the director, because I can reshape it and try different things.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, I want it for now. But I'd love to write movies that don't involve me, and that I would just get to direct.
Yeah.
One of my goals is to write a movie for a woman, and to learn how to get better at writing parts for women, because I'm not that good at it. I just started, and I'm a guy. Not that you can't write women if you're a guy, but I think there's an arrogance in thinking that you can. I think you have to learn how to do that.
I thought you did a nice job in
Thanks.
Dean.
I tried. I mean, it's important to me. I think getting roles for women in Hollywood, especially funny women and older women, I think it's important. I don't think people get worse at acting as they get older, unless they've had some sort of head accident or something. But usually they get better.
Right.
So there are a lot of great actors who are older who just want some real roles. And needless to say, women of all ages, they just get shortchanged, and they get, hey, you be the girl and go laugh at his jokes, you know, and you be the ex-girlfriend, you be the one who's cheating. You know, it's like, I don't know, it just would be more satisfying, and it's not even that altruistic. I think you tell a better story when you give parts to women and people of color and everything. But it's interesting, when you're single, I'm not single, I mean, when you're a straight white male, middle class like me, it's like the easiest, smoothest road there is in this country. You know, I don't have to tell you guys. It's just like, so I feel like there is a responsibility if you've had that easier ride to figure out how to make things that include other people and not just be like, hey, me. Yeah. Another story about a white guy and his friends, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's a cool challenge.
It's a challenge.
To, like,
I think it is a
seek out
challenge.
For yourself, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's nice to say, oh, yes, I want to write parts for, but then you have to like learn how to do it. And empathy, I mean, it's all about empathy. It's about thinking outside of yourself, which is hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Now that we're sad, why don't we...
Now let's turn it over to the audience.
Go back to work.
Cheer us up. Does anyone have any questions? Just raise your hand.
So you're talking about your first 2 shows and how the audience completely changed the feeling of those shows. If you were in San Francisco versus, say, Dallas versus some small town in somewhere, how do you shape your material to play to that audience versus that audience versus that audience?
A couple things. Luckily, I've been around long enough that I get my crowd in each city, so it does normalize it a little bit, so the differences aren't as pronounced, so I don't have to change too much. But improvising more and paying attention more to what's happening in the room has helped me because I can kind of play off of what's happening in the room enough that it shapes the show. I don't like getting heckled, but when I do, that becomes part of the show, and I try to pay attention. And so even regional differences aside, it's the specificity of each evening and the people in that room shape it. But not that much because I've written jokes, and I do like writing material, so I have my material I'm going to share with people. I do, in my experience, find differences in different parts of the country for sure. But like I said, I get kind of my people in each place, so it was surprising to me, I remember, for a while, because I thought it would be a lot different when I started really touring around. And then even in other countries, it was like I ended up like in the Brooklyn of London at some point. It felt like it to me, at least, without insulting London, as if they didn't predate Brooklyn. But my experience was Brooklyn, so I'm like, oh, this feels a bit like Brooklyn. People look the same. If I didn't hear anybody talk, I could kind of swap people and be like, you walk down Union, you know, in Park Slope, like you look like that, and you're going to go over
Williamsburg
into Brixton over here, you know.
How's it going?
Hey.
So obviously stand-up falls in the category of public speaking. So I was wondering, what type of advice would you give someone who might not necessarily be interested in stand-up, but is interested in like public speaking and different avenues, in terms of like dealing with nerves? Because obviously, like, we've all heard the age-old trick of picturing everyone in your underwear, but who wants to actually do that? So like, what other types of advice have you either heard or like found useful for yourself that you can maybe pass on to us?
Yeah, this is, for me, an interesting question. Let me think about this. So, like I said, I think I said my dad was a priest. So when I was growing up, I got to see my dad give a sermon every Sunday. And he just had like an envelope with just like a word or two on it. And then he would just speak extemporaneously. So I grew up thinking that's just like something you do. I saw my dad do it. And he kind of did 20 minutes every Sunday and would get laughs and stuff. And it just seemed natural to me. So I did pick a good job for me because I'm fine with public speaking and I never got nervous doing it. But I've thought about a lot about it over the years as I read about how it's like one of the top 2 fears people have. It's like death or public, whatever it was like, it's up there. And, you know, I think about it, I mean, personally, I'm not sure what the best techniques are, but I walked the room. See, she was like, this guy's not a good public speaker. I'm out of here. What's good about this room is that the door, it's like it's got a gasket on it or something. It's like a refrigerator door, so it's just... And she's smart because she's going while I'm talking about it, so now she can play into it. I know people at Google are smart. You know, oh, you're going to ask a question. See, you're even smarter than I think. God damn it.
She didn't have a question. She came
so, I have found that failing is one of the best things developmentally of all, in my experience, because before I started, I was afraid of bombing, and I did bomb, and I still do occasionally, and I've certainly bombed plenty. But then you bomb, and nobody cares. It's amazing how little people care about you or me. Do you know what I mean? It's just incredible to me. I saw a friend once have a bad set on Letterman, and I felt for him, and I thought, oh my God. Like, it didn't go well. And then I realized nobody cares. Like, it's like maybe he cares. I'm sure he cares. his girlfriend if he had one at the time, maybe his mom if she watched. I don't know. Like, you're literally talking single-digit numbers of people who care. And now I've come to a point where there's so much content that for any of it to be remembered for even, I don't know, 10 years, maybe 50 years, it has to be extremely, exceptionally great or exceptionally horrendous. Like, I feel like you're at those little ends of the bell curve. Everything else is in the middle and completely vanishes. I'm under no illusions that what I'm saying right now doesn't fucking matter. This is gone. So it's like, I don't know if that would take the pressure off, but I don't think that's hyperbole. I think that's just the truth. Yeah. So, I don't know, when you shrink that down now to public speaking in some room, it's just like, all right, I hope people are entertained while it's happening. You know, you do your best, but it just seems like it just vanishes. God, I'm feeling really dark today. So what was the talk like? I think he was a comedian. He seemed sad to me. Didn't he make a movie? He should be happy, but it's something about the universe is pointless, and I guess there's no God. If you just listen to his talk, there's certainly no God present.
Well, Demetri, well, it's not quite polished that all the things you did. I love your shows, your book, and I hope I like the movie too. We don't know yet it's a success or not.
Success.
Yeah. I wonder where do you get the most inspiration from? Is that from the treadmill, from like on the low reading shampoo labels, or like in the Museum of Modern Art?
Yeah. I went to the Matisse Diebenkorn thing at MoMA, SF MoMA. I don't know if you guys call it MoMA or something. That was great. So I love going to museums. And when I go on the road, the first thing I look for is to see what museum is in that city and what's going on there. And that's nice. I find museums are great places to wander and daydream with my notebook and stuff. I've learned over the years, for me, I try to find inspiration wherever I can. And I really try to play games. Nothing creepy. It sounds creepy saying that, but I'm just saying, like, constraints. I don't know, like, for example, you know, I like palindromes, I think, because there's such a challenging constraint when you try to develop a palindrome. The rule that it has to be the same forward and backwards by letter, you know, that kind of palindrome, and that hopefully it makes sense. Those two simple rules yield so many difficulties, but I think it can also yield surprising results. And you know, years ago, I made myself learn how to write and draw with my left hand. I don't do it very well, but even that, maybe it's pointless, but the mindfulness that it kind of invokes just by doing something difficult made me feel more perceptive or present in what I was doing. And those kinds of games, wherever I go, I can kind of take them with me so that I can find inspiration in different places. But sometimes, like, I've done things where I just like bring a dictionary on the plane and just read the dictionary. It seems kind of boring or stupid, but I still like paper books, so that helps me a lot too, just to have a thing I can flip through. But I just read it and see if ideas come out of it. They usually don't, but I might learn a couple words. But sometimes something, or when I first started doing stand-up, if I was in like some shitty open mic, you're waiting to go on, there's like 9 people in the audience. It's not going to go well. They're tired. You're in the basement of a bar. It's like the Lower East Side at the time. I would do this one room a lot. And before I'd go on, I'd be standing next to another comic, and I'd say, hey, can you give me a word? And they would say, what? I'm saying, just tell me a word. And I'd be like, toaster or something. And then I would just add it to my set list, and then when I was on stage, I would make myself do a joke about toasters, even though I didn't have one. Because the stakes were so low. I'm bombing anyway. What does it fucking matter if I tell a terrible joke about toasters? You know what I mean? So, yeah, so I would do things like that. And I figured, hey, maybe if I do it 100 times, maybe 2 times I get good jokes out of that. And someone's helped me write a joke, helped me think of a premise I didn't think of. As long as I can tolerate the other 98 shitty ones that I wrote, it's like, to me, it's kind of game-oriented. And again, anything that drives me back into the process and not so much toward results seems to stimulate my creativity a little bit more, you know, for me personally.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks.
The last answer was actually really interesting for me because in school, I was the girl who was known for reading the dictionary and being really into palindromes and trying to write with my left hand.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was interesting, but that's not what my question's about. So in between painting a painting or writing a stand-up set or creating a movie, how do those different mediums express different messages that you want to tell or a story that you want to tell?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question for me too, because I think a lot about this in trying to, let's say, rotate the crops or whatever, like trying to basically just keep my career going. You know, if I can get work doing stand-up, that's great, but you can't go to every market every year, so you got to stop. So then maybe I can do something else. Maybe the movie works. If it doesn't, okay, maybe I can get an acting part. If that doesn't work, then maybe I can write a book. And if they don't want my book, okay, back to stand-up. Enough time has passed. I failed for a year. Let's try something else. So it's made me think a lot about how the medium can inform the content. And I think a lot of my favorite things in whatever medium they're presented through probably use that medium pretty well. So that I've seen plays that have worked really nicely as movies, but it sure would have been great to see it as a play because it was written for the constraints of the stage and that kind of blocking and being in one place and in one time. Whereas a movie that might involve time travel or lasers and stuff might not work as well on the stage, right? Because you're not getting to take advantage of all those tools at your disposal. And I found that to be the case with stand-up, which is presentational. You can tell stories and do characters on stage, but it's still kind of a one-person presentation. Whereas with a movie, I get to act with other actors, and I have music that can come in, and I can be tight, I can be wide, I can direct your attention. So in each attempt at generating content for me, I really try to think about the medium and how I can maximize what I'm doing in that medium. So for example, in my movie, I play an illustrator. I wanted to be an illustrator in the movie because I had a giant rectangle that I could tell a story on, and I could show my drawings in ways that I wouldn't otherwise get to do it. I show drawings on stage sometimes, like on an easel, and I've done a book of drawings, and that's cool. But to get to put them next to an image of someone else doing something, now I have a different game I can play here visually, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think a lot about that. Do you generate content in like different kind of ways and stuff? Yeah, so maybe you find the same thing where I sometimes want to force something into one form, but it doesn't work. It's just, it kind of speaks back and says, nah, this isn't going to work as a drawing, so forget it, dude. I'm like, okay. But once I learned to respect it, the process more, I feel like answers started to reveal themselves. They don't always work, but, you know, yeah, thanks. I can't believe that you do palindromes and all that stuff. It's, yeah. I'm at Google, though, right? Like, you guys are, you have a reputation
We
for
all
this
do palindromes.
for kind of
too,
shit. Yeah. Let me stereotype you all. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for coming today. I really like what you said about you making an effort to write more women characters. I think that's awesome. My question is, are there any recent films that you really like or movies that are coming out that you're excited about?
Yes. I really loved Brooklyn. I don't know if you guys saw that movie. It's a couple years old, but I saw it a little bit later. But my wife and I saw that, and that one really stayed with me. I've been on a Hitchcock kick lately, so these aren't recent movies, but I had never seen Dial M for Murder, and that was actually a play that was adapted into a film. I really liked that movie. I like To Catch a Thief, which I hadn't seen before. So I'm trying to educate myself going through different directors' work now. I watched City Lights for the first time, which is a Charlie Chaplin film, and I thought that was great. So my answer is going to be probably not as current as I'd like it to be. I don't know. I really like superhero movies. I wish there were a couple coming out, but I feel like there aren't any superhero movies or any like that kind of stuff out there these days. But if they ever make those, remakes and superhero movies are probably my favorites. Just what I hate are original ideas that are smaller and like personal. I don't know what's coming out that I'm excited to see. I'm a little behind on stuff. I'm trying to think of what else. I loved You Can Count on Me. That's not so recent either, but it's a Kenny Lonergan film. I want to see Manchester by the Sea. I heard it's really sad, so I'm trying to figure out when's a good time to do that. Probably if I'm sad about something else, if I'm like, all right, I'm already bumming, like let me just piggyback that rather than ruining a good mood. So working through some stuff here that you guys don't need to hear about. Yeah.
All right. I just have a quick question about like doing exactly what you love for work, and at what point you decided that, because part of the attraction of going to law school is almost that you don't need to do what you really like for money and then compromise the quality of that for money. And do you ever feel that A, you have to tailor what you're saying to make more money and it's not really what you want to do, or B, that it affects what you find funny in the real world and whether or not you're able to appreciate comedy naturally?
Yeah, I haven't found A to be the case, and B to some degree. I feel like part of my brain broke a while ago because I've been exposed to too much comedy, and I've been trying to come up with funny things for too long, so it's just like blown out some sort of wiring in my head. So now, for something to really make me laugh, someone probably has to get really hurt falling off of something. It's just terrible. It's just kind of what happened, you know. But I've thought about this a lot because I feel lucky that I got to take something I love doing. I found a thing I love doing, so that's a lucky thing. And then I got to get money for it, so it became a job. But the problem is it did become a job, so it did adulterate it a little bit. But now my fantasy is that I somehow get successful enough that it can become a hobby, so that you can almost go full circle, so that, again, if I were the trillionaire, painting is a hobby, because I'm not going to get money from painting. So that one's kind of pure because of the limits of what I can do with it, or I don't have the energy to pursue it, whatever. But comedy, I've made a job, and I'm certainly not the most successful at it, but I can make a living doing it. But I do have to think about it as something I'm selling. Yeah, it would be cool to be super successful and then to just do stand-up for fun in direct markets, to go to cities that I like. I love going to San Francisco. I love going to Portland. Chicago's really fun. I love going back to New York. You know, I have my spots where I like to go, and however much you guys travel, you have your list. Yeah, it'd be cool to go to those cities, do a couple of shows for fun, go to the museum, go to a couple restaurants or whatever. But I still feel like, yeah, I'm going to shoot a new special in December, and I have to work on those jokes and pump them out and kind of worry about it, where I didn't before. Before I did comedy, I didn't worry. I just would maybe be funny at this party or not or whatever. But now it's like, I do a show, people show up, they got a babysitter, they're sitting there, and then I'm like, shit, this isn't good enough for them. Fuck. They paid to see me, you know. So yeah, there's a responsibility in that. I'm making every answer sad at the end. I don't know why.
No.
I think it's because that's how life is.
Okay, we got one more. We have time for one more.
No pressure.
Just end
Yeah,
on the best
sorry
quote.
if this isn't good. What was it like being on set of a movie, and then also how did you get to know the actors you were working with, but then also get to know them as characters? And did you find that confusing, knowing people personally, but then if they were different in character?
Yeah, being on the set it was a mix of excitement, gratefulness, dread, and then fear became more of it because it was such a low-budget movie. I had all these illusions about what I would be doing and how my movie was going to go, and then we'd get there, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, we don't have the location. We're not allowed inside. What? I thought we were going to, no, yeah, we can't go in there. I'm like, the actors are getting makeup right now. What are we going to do? I don't know. Shit. So that was really hard. The practical parts of it were so hard, and they kind of just compounded. It got so difficult. And then, of course, the fear kind of multiplied because I wrote it, directed it, started, hey, hooray for me. Now I'm in trouble. It's all my fault. I have nobody to blame. I'm like, this is going to suck. I don't want this to be out there. So that took the fun out of it pretty quickly. But once I kind of settled down, it was fun to work with the other actors. I knew Rory Scovel. He's in my movie. He's a comedian. So I knew him beforehand. But he auditioned for me, which was nice. So I could see how the lines worked and if he would be believable as the character as I conceived him. And then all the other parts people auditioned, except for a few offer-only parts. Like Kevin Kline did not have to audition for me. And I was grateful that he even read the script. And when he read it and agreed to do it, it made the movie happen and everything. So I was getting to know all these people as we were shooting. It was really cool. It was just a privilege because you get to make the thing together. You get to do the scene together. You find it together, you know? You're listening to each other. And I told everybody, hey, I'm not precious about these words. I wrote the script. If we can do better, if you can top it, go for it. If you want to improvise, I'm totally up for that. So I think that created a pretty good environment, a good working environment, because I wanted to let people do what they were really good at. And that included my director of photography and my art director, wardrobe. It's really cool to get to work on a movie because it really is so collaborative, down to every detail. And it's nice to be the director because you can guide how the process goes and say, you know what, I want this is what I had in mind. But I think one of the great things about it is that you have other people to help you make decisions, and you can find the solutions together. And when it works, it's just gratifying in a different way than when something you just did yourself works. And then now that I'm at this stage, you guys haven't seen the movie. I hope you do. I'm glad you liked the movie. The people I've talked to who liked it, it's different because as comedians, we need validation for whatever happened in my life. I didn't get beaten up by my parents or anything like that, but something happened to me, I don't know what, that I need people to like me more than the normal person. It's like, it's kind of a curse, you know, to have to go out in front of crowds. I mean, I like joking around and the puzzles of it, but I think I want, you know, validation. We all do to some degree. So to make a movie, it's just, especially one like this, it's very personal, and I am just kind of opening up a lot, for better or worse. When it does connect with another person, it's validating in such a specific way that honestly makes me feel a little less alienated than I sometimes do because of the way the world is going these days, and politics and online hatred, you know, all that. I don't have to tell you guys what we're living in right now. So this has been a surprising, I don't know what you'd call it, gift or little oasis, just for a short little window here where I get to do screenings and people come up to me afterwards and say, you know, I lost someone and this has really meant something to me, or I liked how you did that, or, you know, thanks for doing something like this. Whatever it is, it just feels like, wow, I don't know this person, and suddenly I'm having a very real conversation with them. When most of the time, I'm not talking to strangers. You're just not allowed. You can't just go up and be like, hey, how's it going? Especially as a guy, you can't walk up to people and start talking and be like, fuck away from me, man. What do you want? You know? So it's nicer to have that kind of interaction with people. And even this, I know I don't know what this room is considered. It's a conference room or
Sure.
it's just some sort of, I know you're controlling the world somehow from this room. I don't know what it is. But to get to come here and you know, talk to a bunch of people I don't know. You took the time to ask me about my life and everything. You know, it is validating in a different way. That's it's easy to not take. It's easy to take that for granted, but to say, hey, you know what? It's a nice moment where people gave me some attention and I got to share what I think and feel, and about 90% of the people stayed in the room. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
I thought this was great, and I had a lot of fun. I know everyone else had a lot of fun. And let's just thank Demetri Martin for coming to Google.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Google.